Okay, so now let's mix things up. I'm gonna ask you guys to solve. I'm gonna have some questions that have theta. I'm gonna ask you guys to solve for theta. Here, this one says find the measure of each angle indicated. Or I could just say find the measure of each, or find the measurement indicated. So I could ask you guys to solve for an angle, like 31 through 33. I'm gonna go for an angle. Or I can ask you to solve for a side. All right, notice on my side, I'm gonna represent it as x. Now, each of these, whether it's angle or side, each of these, the instructions said rounded to the nearest tenth. So my answers will have one decimal place, okay? This is kind of like what we saw Monday and Tuesday, so let's take a look. That theta, I don't know what it is. I'm solving for that one. I do know that 16 is the hypotenuse and 13 is the opposite. My theta is the angle, so I remember the acronym SO. Remember, you gotta use the acronym SOHCAHTOA. So I'm gonna use SO, which stands for sine of theta, is equal to 13 over 16. So that means theta, which is what I'm solving for, is equal to sine inverse of 13 over 16. Okay, so remember that I'm going to use inverse when I'm solving for an angle. So I'm just going to grab my calculator. I'm going to solve for sine inverse of 13 over 16. Again, let me use the calculator from Canvas. This is the one that you guys have. Usually when I open, don't forget that it opens on radians. I have to switch it to degrees. For inverse, I see sine, but not sine inverse. So yesterday we talked about pressing the second key, and it gives me sine inverse. My calculator, when I press it, it says A sine, which some people call it arc sine. Sine inverse, arc sine is the same thing. So sine inverse, and in open parentheses, so I'm inside my parentheses, I'm going to type in 13 over 16. 13 over 16. Let me close my parentheses. Remember the instructions, what I was working was sine inverse of 13 over 16. Let me press equal. I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, so one decimal place. In this case, I'm going to round it to 54.3. So let me go here, 54.3. If the instructions say round it to the nearest whole number, 54. Nearest tenth, 54.3. So do pay attention to the instructions. Okay, now here, number 32, I have the opposite and the adjacent. I don't have the hypotenuse. So I'm going to remember the acronym TOA, which means tangent of theta is equal to 4 over 6. That means that theta is equal to tangent inverse of 4 over 6. Okay, so let me come back to my calculator. Let me clear this out. So I'm going to say tangent inverse of 4 divided by 6 equals, says 33.69. I'm going to the nearest tenth, so one decimal place. 33.69, it will say 33.7. Right. So my answer here, theta is 33.7. Right? It was 33.69. So around 33.7. Now here for number 33, I have the opposite and the adjacent. I don't have the hypotenuse again. So again, I'm going to use the acronym TOA, which means tangent of theta is equal to 8 over 11, which means that theta is tangent inverse of 8 over 11. Okay, let me grab my calculator. Tangent inverse of 8 over 11 equals 36.02. So that's just gonna run it to 36.0. Now the 0.0 is optional. So if you guys type in 36.0 or just 36, same thing. Now number 34, I know the angle this time. I'm solving for a side. Now 5.6 here is the hypotenuse. Based on the 38 degrees, x is the adjacent. So I'm going to remember the acronym CA, which stands for cosine of 38 is equal to x over 5.6. My x is on top, so that's good. Let me multiply both sides by 5.6, because that way my fraction cancels out. So I have 5.6 times cosine of 38 is equal to x. So let me grab my calculator. Now I need cosine, not cosine inverse. So let me flip this second again. So I deal with cosine. So in this case, I'm going to go 5.6 times cosine of 38 equals, going to the nearest tenth, so 1 decimal place. So I'm going to round it to 4.4. Take a look at number 35. Just 2 more questions. Let's see. Have the hypotenuse, and based on the 31 degrees, x is the opposite. I'm going to remember the acronym SO, which stands for sine of 31 is equal to x over 7.6. Let me multiply both sides by 7.6. So I have 7.6 times sine of 31. It's equal to x. Okay, so let me grab my calculator. I'm just going to go 7.6 times sine of 31. So it's 3.91. So I'm going to round it to 3.9. And lastly, here, number 36, I have the hypotenuse and the opposite. I'm going to use the acronym SO, which means sine of 36 is equal to x over 9. Let me multiply both sides by 9. So I have that 9 times sine of 36 is equal to x. Okay, so let me grab my calculator here. 9 times sine of 36. It says 5.29. So I'm going to round that to 5.3. My x is 5.3.